Do you ever wonder why we do the things we do? Today we're going to talk about that. So have you ever done anything for no reason at all? Or have you ever done something and afterwards you ask yourself the question, why did I do it? Or maybe somebody asked you a question of why did you do something and your answer was, I don't know. The truth is everything we do for a reason, or we wouldn't do it. So think about that. Researchers say that there are two primary reasons for doing the things that we do. One is to avoid pain or to get out of something that is uncomfortable. The other is to achieve pleasure. So I think there's really one reason that we do anything, and that's because we want to feel better. We want to be happy. I believe that the motive behind all of our behavior is that we want to be in a state of happiness. And I believe that happiness is our natural state, and that in life, whenever we are in a state of discomfort or pain or unhappiness, we're striving to get back to that place of happiness. So I'm going to put a model on the board that will help you to understand this a little bit better and make it real clear. So this box here just represents our outcomes in life. And again, I believe that the outcome that we all want is that we want to be happy. But as we've been saying, or I've been saying, everything we do for a reason. So what is it that drives or creates our outcomes in life? And this box is our behaviors or our actions. But what is it that drives our behaviors? Think about that for a minute. This box represents our beliefs, and then there's one more box, and that's our thoughts. So when you think about, in your own life, when you're not getting the outcomes that you want, if you look at the diagram, what is it that needs to change? Well, it appears that it's our behavior that needs to change. But here's something interesting about behavior. If you think in your own life, if you've had a behavior that you want to change, let's say that maybe you want to stop swearing. And so you make a decision that you're going to stop swearing. And at the beginning of the day, you commit yourself to, I'm going to go throughout this day without swearing. And then you leave your house, you go to work, you get involved in your daily activities, and you come back at the end of the day and you're like, oh, man, I forgot all about what I was going to try to do today. I wasn't going to swear. And you didn't even think about it throughout the day. So here's something that's kind of interesting. Do you know what the average attention span of a teenager is? Well, they found that the average attention span is about 7 seconds. So that may be less than what you thought. And then guess what the average attention span of an adult is? It too is only about 7 seconds, which means if I make a decision that I'm going to change my behavior, about how long am I going to remember that that's what I want to do before my mind goes somewhere else? So there's another thing to think about, and that is the way our mind works. In a simple explanation, there's two parts of our brain. There's the conscious part and the subconscious part. Well, we spend about 90% of our day in our subconscious mind, meaning on autopilot. Only about 7 to 10% of our day are we actually consciously thinking our thoughts and choosing our actions. And as an example, let's imagine you were standing here with me and I tossed this marker to you. What would be your response? So I've done this probably hundreds of times with people that I've worked with, and almost always, I think I've only had one time, which happened this week, that a person responded differently. But almost always the person reaches out and catches the marker. And so then I'll ask them a series of questions. I will ask them, what did you do? And they'll say, well, I caught the marker. And then I will ask them why. And they will say things like, well, it's just instinct, or it's just a reaction, or I don't know, I didn't really think about it. And then I'll ask them, well, did you have to catch the marker? And they'll go, no. So I'll ask them, well, what could have you done? And they'll think about it. And there's a few other options. They could have just watched the marker and allow it to hit them and fall to the ground. They could have knocked the marker away, or they could have moved out of the way. And so then I'll ask them again, so why did you catch it? And almost always they can't give an explanation as to why they caught it. I'll then ask them, well, did you think about catching it? And again, almost always they'll say, no, I didn't think about catching it. But then I'll ask them, well, did your brain think about catching it? And as they think about that, they will always say, well, yeah. And so then I'll explain that in a simple way, I believe this is the way that process works. When I toss the marker, your eyes see me do that. They send a message to your brain that says he just tossed the marker to me. And then your brain runs it through a series of questions where your brain says, he just threw the marker at me. What should I do? Should I watch it? Should I catch it? Should I move out of the way? Should I block it? And based on previous experiences, the brain makes a decision about what to do. And in this case, to catch the marker. So the brain then sends a message to the muscles in my arms and my hands, and I reach out and catch the marker. But all of that happens in an instant. So our brains are amazing, and it's pretty cool, but can you see any downsides of this? So what we're talking about here is conditioned or learned behavior. So throughout life, we have experiences where something happens and we respond to that. And if our response gets us an outcome that we want, then we'll tend to do that behavior again. And if it works again and we get that same outcome, we'll continue to do that until eventually this conscious behavior moves into our subconscious. We no longer have to consciously think about it. Whenever we're in that situation, then our subconscious processes it, figures it out, and we behave accordingly. So going back, now, if I make a decision that I want to change my behavior, but my attention span is only about 7 seconds long before I'm back here in the subconscious part of my brain, I'm not going to be very successful at changing my behavior, of getting a different outcome and changing my behavior. So if I want to change my behavior, I need to look at, well, what are my thoughts and my beliefs? So beliefs are thoughts that come together that create a belief about who we are, about life in general, about how to achieve the outcomes that we want in life. But here's the interesting thing about beliefs. Do you even know what your beliefs are? Most of the time in life, there are some things that maybe we know are beliefs about religion or spirituality, political points of view, things like that we consider beliefs. But there are other things that we don't ever even question. We just think our beliefs are true, that that's the way it is, and then we act in accordance. So here's a couple of things to think about. Is there a correct way to squeeze the tube of toothpaste? Now, some of you may laugh at that, and some of you may have really strong feelings about, well, for sure, there's a right and a wrong way to squeeze the tube of toothpaste. How about, is there a right and a wrong way to put the toilet paper on the toilet paper dispenser? Does it roll off the top or does it roll off the back? How about loading the dishwasher? Is there a right and a wrong way of how to load the dishwasher? Or are there just preferences? Well, if I think that my beliefs are true and I never question them, then think about how often we actively defend our beliefs because we have another subconscious belief that if we're wrong about something, then maybe that means something about us as a person, that we have less value or that we're not okay. And so we have this conditioned belief that in order to be okay, we have to be right. Can you see the problem here? If I have a belief and this belief is not true, but I think it's true, I'm going to act in accordance with that belief, but will I get the outcome that I want? No, I'll end up being frustrated. And then oftentimes we don't realize it's because of our beliefs. We think it's because of our behavior, or it's because of somebody else or something else. And so we spend all of our time trying to control these things instead of fixing the core or the root of the problem. And so in life, one thing that's very important to understand is there is a difference between truth and preferences. So a preference would be something like, what is the best flavor of ice cream? Is it chocolate or is it vanilla? Well, there isn't really a right or a wrong. There's a preference. But there are other things where there is a right or a wrong or a truth or an untruth. For example, if I drop this marker, or if I just set this marker here in the air and I want it to float, will it float? No, it's not going to float. But what if I believe that it will? I can set it there time and time and time again. And maybe it's because I'm holding it that way. Maybe if I hold the marker this way and I let it drop, no, it still falls. Why? Because there's a law that governs the world in which we live called gravity. And it doesn't matter whether I know about the law of gravity, whether I understand it, or whether I believe it. It still exists and it still operates and affects everything that we do. So we live in a world that's governed by natural laws or God's laws. When we understand what those laws are, then we can follow them and we can achieve outcomes. For example, we're able to fly today because we understand the law of gravity, but we also understand other laws like lift and thrust and those things. So it's an understanding of those laws that allows us to expand and do more in our own lives. It's critical for us, first of all, to become aware of what our beliefs are and to begin to question them and say, is this a belief or is this a truth? And then the second thing is we want to make sure that our beliefs are founded upon principles or truths. Because when our behavior is in alignment with truth, then we will get the outcomes in our life. And that's the way to achieve true happiness, success, and to have healthy, happy relationships. Thanks again for watching. Hope you found today's video helpful. Go ahead and comment below or visit our website.